It is 4:30 on Thursday, October 27th, 2022, and I call this meeting of the Meridian Historic Preservation Commission to order. Roll call. Blaine Johnston's here. Destiny Hart. Here. John Dinger. Not here. Pam Jagosh. Jody Alt.
Present.
Jack Keller. And before we go any further, I want to mention that Commissioner Ricks is no longer on the commission, so the mayor's office is in the process of interviewing for that spot. Before we adopt the agenda, I need to amend it. I need to move 2 items. Report from TAG on the Main Street survey is going to move up to item number 3. And report on Hall Films will be moved up to number 4 just after that. So with that amendment, do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Mr. President, I move that we adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Alt, seconded by Commissioners Keller and Jagosh for adoption of the agenda. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. Thank you. Approval of our minutes from our July 28th, 2022 meeting.
I move to approve the minutes.
I second that.
Motion by Commissioner Keller, seconded by Commissioner Alt for approval of our minutes from July 28th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Approval of our monthly financial statements. Ms. Schiffler, I know we're in a new budget year.
Yes, we're in a new budget year. If you look at the statement, you'll see that we spent all of our funds from last year, and this year have a budget of $10,000 with no expenditures on this fiscal year yet.
Thank you. With that, do we have approval of our monthly financials?
I move to approve financial.
Motion by Commissioner Jagosh, seconded by Commissioner Keller for approval of our monthly financials. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We will now go on to new business. Barbara, report on your Main Street survey project. You have the floor.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you all this evening, and I'm really glad that we can share some information about phase 1 of the survey. I am going to share my screen, and we all know that sometimes I have difficulty, but let's hope we won't today. There it is. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Okay, good. Great. All right, so the Main Street survey, we did our field work in August. And of course, when it was very hot, but we were able to pull together the information that was needed to get to SHPO by the end of the fiscal year. And so just as a refresher, the entire survey area actually includes 37 city blocks located south of Cherry Lane, Fairview, west of East 4th Avenue, and north of Broadway Avenue, and east of Northwest 1st Street. And the phase 1 boundaries extend north to south from Carlton Avenue to Broadway Avenue, and east and west from East 2nd Street to Northwest 1st Street. So those are the verbal boundaries, but it's always helpful to have a map. And so you can see here that this is the entire survey area, and then this is phase 1. So this is the area that we focused on this past late summer and fall. And hopefully we'll get to go ahead with phase 2, which will be this area up here. So I'm going to give a little bit of background because I think it's great to have a refresher course on why were we even doing this survey. Well, the reason we do these cultural resource surveys or architectural historical architectural surveys is to provide information that will assist the HPC in determining the historic significance of the buildings and structures and determine if there could be a potential historic district. We did the reconnaissance level survey, and that survey is sometimes called a windshield survey. So it's a visual survey and there's very little research at this point. And the purpose is really to identify that general distribution, the location, and the nature of the cultural resources within a given area. Again, it helps to determine if there is enough historic integrity for a historic district. It will also identify those sites that could be eligible to the National Register of Historic Places. And it is a preliminary step, which will lead hopefully to more in-depth projects. So we do some pre-field work, even though there's not a lot of research involved with the reconnaissance level survey. We still need to know what it is we're looking at. We, of course, need to be familiar with the history of Meridian, which we are. We typically will look at whatever written sources are available about the history of the community. And of course, in the case of Meridian, there's actually so much good information out there. We're pretty lucky. We look at the Sanborn fire insurance maps, which I have a sample of what one of those is. And those maps actually help to kind of identify what the area looked like early on in 1907, 1920, or maybe in the 1950s. We look at the Ada County assessor records because that actually helps give us really great information on construction dates. And we also do what's called a literature review from the Idaho State Historic Preservation Office. And what that is they essentially run a review of all of the sites that have been previously surveyed in a given area. And this one, of course, yielded a lot of results because there has been some work done in this particular area previously. And this is a Sanborn map. This is a Sanborn fire insurance map. And I'm sure some of you are familiar with these maps. These maps are actually something that are used nationwide. The Sanborn Fire Insurance Company started making these maps way back in the 1860s and 70s. And actually, you can find them for most communities in the United States. And they're really great for the purposes of survey and for anyone interested in doing historical research because they show you the footprint of the building, they provide an address, they show you, basically the layout of a community. And so we always look at these before we start doing our physical survey. And I think it's interesting or helpful to know how do we go about even conducting a survey? I mean, what does that really mean? So we actually are boots on the ground. We are out there with our cameras and our clipboards. We conduct them from the public right of way, the street, the alleyways. We do not go on private property for these surveys. If for some reason we have to access private property, then we will, call and get permission from the property owner. But typically this level of survey is done directly from the street. The steps are, we do that on-site survey, which is marching down the sidewalk and getting the photographs. We make sure we map each of the properties on both the Sanborn map, and we also will identify them on a USGS map or a city map. And then after we do all of that field work, then we go back to our office and we get all of that information put together and entered into the Idaho Historic Sites Inventory database. And what are we documenting? Well, we have to have that property address. We do a very brief description of the architectural style and the features. We look at the materials. What was the building constructed from? We evaluate what the condition of the structure is. We determine, again, this is baseline determination, but we determine if the property might be eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. And we also look at the buildings to see if they would be contributing or non-contributing to a National Register Historic District or a local historic district. The photo documentation, of course, is really important. We do digital images for every principal building, the garages, sheds, associated structures. We include an overview photo that might show all the buildings, and then we have to do at least a minimum of one oblique photo for all of those same buildings. And typically we do at least 2 photographs of each of the buildings at a minimum. Of course, if we're working in a rural area, then you have to document every single building on the site, and you might have multiple numbers of photographs. Again, we record these on the Sanborn maps, on the city maps. We also use USGS maps, and it says here that that's only for rural areas, but the truth is that we also recorded all of these sites on a USGS map as well. And then we also have to do a KMZ shape file. So there's also a digital file for all of these properties as well. We look at the condition of the property, and just because a building is in poor shape does not mean that it wouldn't be eligible for the National Register. But it is useful to, of course, be able to determine what the condition is. And excellent, of course, it's basically everything is in good shape. There's no broken or missing elements. The siding has no wear. The vegetation is under control. Good, the roof covering appears to be pretty weather tight. The structure doesn't have any broken or missing elements. There are no visible structural problems, and the vegetation is under control. It might show some form of deterioration or, minor roof leaks, which we really can't see from the sidewalk, but we look to see if maybe windows are missing, doors are missing, that type of thing. And poor, of course, is when something is really in bad shape, and you can see just at a glance that it's been, not cared for, and there are a lot of structural problems. Perhaps if it's a Queen Anne, it might have, maybe it has a lot of details missing, or, a porch is gone or something like that. So we still have to put that information. We just mark it on the form. And then when we're in the field again, one of the main things, of course, is we're trying to decide if the building is eligible or not. And this is the criteria. And with the things that we look at to determine if it might be eligible. It has to be at least 50 years or older, but for the purposes of all these surveys, we actually record buildings that are 45 years or older. And the reasoning for that is because these surveys, they have a shelf life, and perhaps there is something that might be planned for the community in 10 years or 5 years from now. And if we're recording things that are only 50 years old, we would be missing a number of properties that might, in the time that a plan comes together, might be eligible to the register. They retain that historic appearance, which is called integrity. They might be historically important, which is referred to as significant. So that pre-field research we do actually helps us sort of identify areas where some of these buildings might show up in our survey area. And then this is a criteria for being listed on the National Register: association with events that have made a significant contribution to broad patterns of history, agriculture, mining, community planning, homesteading. For this particular survey, we would really be looking at community planning and the development of Meridian. Association with the productive lives of persons significant to our past. Actually, this is something I've never actually had a property that falls under criterion B. Criterion C is actually the architectural significance. Perhaps it's a distinctive characteristic of a type, a period, a method of construction. And then criteria D actually applies to archaeological sites. And again, I'm not an archaeologist, so we typically don't even look at archaeological sites. And then what about this contributing and non-contributing? And this is the thing that always is pretty interesting. So a contributing building is one whose construction date falls within the proposed historic district's period of significance. So let's say that perhaps the period of significance for the neighborhood is from 1900 to 1936. There was great development occurring in Meridian at that time, and that's when most of the development happened. And so we're looking at those dates as being, something in which these buildings have to fall within. If they fall outside of that, then they would be considered non-contributing. In the case of what we're doing, we're actually looking at the period of significance from basically about 1904 all the way up until, I have to think about this, 1977. So we're looking at a larger period of significance for this survey. And then the building has to contribute to the overall feeling and quality of the rest of the neighborhood, of the potential historic district. It has to retain a high degree, a high integrity of materials and design. And I've got an example of something that is not contributing and something that is contributing. But these are all the things that we're looking at as we're walking down the sidewalk when we get back from doing our field work. Discussions about all of this goes on within our office. Non-contributing, the construction date again is outside the period of significance. So let's say that there is a building constructed in 2022, right smack dab in the middle of the survey area. Well, it's definitely not going to contribute to that period of significance. Perhaps the building was built in 1907, but it's had a lot of work done on it. It's had a lot of replacement materials. Maybe it's got vinyl or metal siding. Perhaps it was a Queen Anne and they took all of the detailing away and covered it up with some other form of siding or some other decoration. Maybe it has had multiple additions, which when you look at the building, you're not even sure anymore what it might have started out its life as. So that is the contributing and non-contributing element that we look at. So after we have marched up and down the sidewalks and gotten our photographs, mapped these things on a Sanborn map or on the USGS map or a city map, made sure that we've taken our photographs, then we go back to our offices, we take that information and we put it into a database that is run by the State Historic Preservation Office. And we make sure that, we've identified our photographs, we make sure all of that information is together, collate everything, and then we prepare the survey report. And all of that information eventually feeds into us making a determination of what the steps what the next steps of the work should be. It also allows us to determine, are there enough contributing properties that this could be a potential historic district? Maybe it's not a potential historic district, but you've got at least 3 or 4 buildings that could be eligible to the National Register, or perhaps there's something very important about one particular house. All of that information will show up in the report. And I just wanted to put together a really quick architectural style sampler for you all, because this is really a rich area as far as architectural styles. And although I don't have every single style that we found in the area, we did find, of course, some Queen Anne style houses, and they feature typically a front-facing gable with a side gable attached at an L angle or at the back. They're typically 1 or 2 stories, and often in our Western towns, we'll have what we call Queen Anne style cottages, which are a 1-story building. They often have a lot of ornamentation in the form of patterned shingles. They might use several different types of material in the construction of the different stories or on the different elevations. This style was very, very popular from 1890 or 1880 until about 1910. And this is a really cute little Queen Anne cottage, not far from where you all are. And that number in the front, the IHSI 01-13604, that number indicates that this place has been previously surveyed. And we updated the survey because the survey was done more than 10 years ago. SHPO standards are, if something has been previously surveyed, you don't have to update the form if it's less than 10 years, but if it's more than 10 years, you take new photographs, you do all the same work that you would do if it was a new structure. This little building, of course, was built in 1903, and I just think it's a really nice example of the Queen Anne cottage. And this is another structure over on Broadway Avenue, and it too, at one point in its life, had a little bit more detailing, but it is also a Queen Anne style structure. You can see these return eaves right here. And at this steeply pitched roof, all of these are elements of the Queen Anne style, but the building has had some modifications over the years, and most recently, of course, in 2001, to make it comfortable for whomever the current owners are. But these vinyl windows, the siding, additions, different things really have led it to be a non-contributing structure in the survey area. We have, of course, the many, many craftsman bungalows in this particular phase 1 of the survey. And the craftsman style is one that most people are pretty familiar with. It gained widespread popularity from 1910 to the 1920s. It has low-pitched gable roofs with wide overhanging eaves, exposed rafter ends, dormer windows, decorative brackets, multi-paned 1/1 double hung sash windows, and uses a lot of natural materials. You'll often see maybe river rock. Sometimes you'll see them made out of, different types of wood, typically in brick. So very, very popular style, and one that I think many of us, of course, are pretty familiar with. This is a really nice little example because you can see the rafter tips over here. The windows have been replaced, but this is probably a historic replacement. This is one of the original windows over here. It's just a nice little feature. Porch has been enclosed somewhere along the way, but that's a nice example of a bungalow. This one has a little bit more ornamentation. It's got these really decorative barge boards right here, and then these piers that are holding up the porch are really pretty, very nice. And although they've replaced the windows, so those are replacement windows, that is not enough to, make it not contribute to a historic district. I mean, you look at this building and you know that this is a craftsman bungalow and it does retain a lot of its original elements. And then the last example is, of course, the E.F. Hunt House, which is already listed on the National Register of Historic Places, but it is certainly a fine example of a two-story craftsman bungalow, and it has some really great detailing. We took the pictures in the summer, and they have a really beautiful landscaping around, but it masks a part of the front part of the house. So that's one of the reasons we take at least 2 to 3 photographs so that you can try and get a good photograph of the building. It was interesting to me because we kind of popped up. There weren't very many Tudor revivals from the 1930s. In fact, I don't think we documented one in this part of the survey area, but there were a number of minimal traditional style houses. And minimal traditional style was popular from the late 30s to the early 50s. They're really basically a pared down colonial revival or Tudor revival style of house. They have very minimal detailing. They actually became very important during the Depression years when the federal government was trying to find ways to help people still be able to purchase houses. And they came up with plans for these very simple style houses. And so it was interesting to see that there are a number of them in phase 1 of the survey area. And as you look at this, you can see right away, there's very minimal elaboration on the building. It's got, it's just a very simple house, a very simple basic house, but this one retains basically all of its integrity. I think, there may have been some window replacements, but again, it's nothing that's going to kick it out of being contributing. And then there were a number of ranch style houses as well. And of course, the ranch style became very popular after the 1950s, and it's characterized by a low profile, a single story, low pitched roof, all of that which emphasizes the horizontal lines of the house. And there were a number of the ranch style buildings and found throughout the survey area. And what was interesting is several of them, and most of them, were actually duplexes or apartment complexes. So that's interesting to me because that would tell you that there was probably a bit of population boom in Meridian, just to, and in the downtown area. And so there was a need for housing, for multifamily housing. And so I think we documented at least 3 of these little apartment complexes. And then, of course, there are a variety of commercial structures in the area. And these are 2, of course, of the commercial front buildings, 1 block building with the nice brick facade. We also documented a funeral home, and I think it was 2 churches, and of course the high school. So quite a variety of building types in the area around phase 1. So what were our findings? Well, for the phase 1, we documented 134 properties. Of those, 53 had been previously surveyed. We found that 5 are potentially eligible to the National Register of Historic Places. And again, this is on that low level of documentation, but there are 5 that might be worthy of being on the National Register. 35 of them we found to contribute to a potential historic district, if that's something that you all want to pursue. We found that 95 were not eligible due to their age. They were less than 45 years of age. They didn't contribute because of renovations, additions, new material, all of those types of things. And that affects the integrity and makes it, not eligible and non-contributing to a historic district. But what we found in this first phase is that there are, we believe, enough buildings on East Idaho Avenue that you might be able to have a historic business district. Even with all the changes going on, there were still some that, you might be able to have a small historic business district. And then there were a number of residential houses on Carlton Avenue, State Avenue, Idaho Avenue, and Northwest First Street that really do retain sufficient integrity to contribute to a residential historic district. So you may not want to pursue a historic district, but what this survey is going to do, it's going to give you really good documentation about where Meridian is today, how many historic properties are left in the area, what changes have occurred with the downtown area, what buildings are gone. I mean, you all are pretty familiar with all of that, but this is, again, could be a good planning document for you in the future if you don't want to pursue doing, going forward with a historic district. So our next steps, we hope, are phase 2, because we feel, of course, things are a little bit incomplete without getting the picture of that whole area. You basically end at a street, and across the street, you still have properties that should be surveyed and should be looked at as far as historic integrity and all of the things that we just talked about. If we are able to go forward, it would be really wonderful to be able to have a little bit more time because 134 properties to document that many, and basically I think it was 6 weeks. It's a lot of work, and you want to do the best job and make sure your final product is acceptable to the State Historical Society. So that's where we are. And I'm back. That's where we are. And I believe that Cassandra got everyone a copy of the phase 1 survey report. I hope you've had a chance to look at that. And, we would, with phase 2, when we complete that phase, all of that information will then be folded into the survey report, and it will be expanded with more information. Depending upon what we find as we, complete the survey of the remainder of that area. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how I want to phrase it. Were you surprised at what you found on the survey as far as number of contributing homes, buildings for potential districts?
I actually was pleasantly surprised. I think that I have to admit, I drive into Meridian and I just see all kinds of new construction, but when you walk around, when you leave that downtown area and head north, there are some really nice pockets of well-maintained historic buildings. And when we talked to people were actually really excited to hear that the survey was going on, and shared stories about some of their houses. I think I was pleasantly surprised. And I actually was surprised. I mean, I walk around downtown Meridian, but, I hadn't really put it in, looked at it from the perspective of what we're doing with the survey. And I was happy to see that there are a number of business buildings that still remain that really do reflect the history of the downtown community as well. So it was surprising to me, and I am really wondering what's going to happen as we move north up, to the other end of the survey area. And when I look at the Google map, or I drove around, it looked to me like there's some infill, but again, when you walk the neighborhood, when you walk the streets, you certainly do get a whole different feel for the area.
But even with some of those infill projects that are in older homes around them, that still wouldn't deter our attempts to maybe possibly do a historic district in the future, correct?
Well, it all depends on the numbers. So it'll come down to is the number of contributing properties versus the number of non-contributing properties. And the balance is that you want to have at more than 50% of the properties to be contributing.
Okay.
And it could be that maybe there is a pocket in that greater survey area that could be a historic district. And we'll know that as we continue on with phase 2. And I'm trying to think of some good examples of other communities that have historic districts. Well, I'm just thinking about Nampa. So in Nampa, they actually have a residential historic district that is a little bit, I have to think about my directions in Nampa because I get turned around, but I think it's a little bit to the north of the city hall. And then they do have, they actually have over by the, in Caldwell, over by the depot, they have an area that is a historic district. So you don't necessarily, you can have your boundaries be tighter and you might have a smaller historic district. So that's something, and one of the things we will do is we will suggest, I mean, we suggested some very general boundaries in this survey report, but as we continue on with the work, we'll be able to maybe solidify that and provide a better idea of what areas might be considered for a historic district.
Okay. I don't have any questions. Does anybody else have any questions?
Just a couple of comments. I wanted to really thank Barbara for being able to do this in a really short timeline so that we could get it done during our fiscal year. So thank you, Barbara. And also the survey report is attached to the agenda if any of the commissioners would like to look at that. And there's also a statement of work for phase 2. If we would like to proceed on that, attached to the agenda. You don't have to take action on it, but it's attached for you.
So we'll take a look at phase 2 and see what it is, and then we'll get back with you, Barbara.
That sounds great. That
Okay.
sounds great. Yes, and one more thing before I go, I wanted to, I'll give you all the one update I have on the Meridian Speedway, which is it's pending at the National Park Service. And so it's been on the list now for about 5 weeks. And I asked SHPO if they had any idea of what was going on. And they said, no, just to sit tight. So I'm sitting tight, but I had hoped tonight to tell you all it had been listed, but we'll just keep our fingers crossed. But pending means that they've looked at it, and Jason just told me to be patient.
Okay, yeah, I've been anxious about that. So
Yeah, yes.
okay, well,
Okay.
thank you.
Well, thank you all.
Mr. Neri.
Mr. President, I've noticed on Barbara's schedule for the phase 2, it pretty much stretches out through most of this fiscal year. And your next meeting is until December, and it's December 22nd, which I'm not sure if you're going to have a forum that close to the holidays. So I didn't know I know it's maybe ambitious to try to make a decision tonight, but probably for her to be able to get, so it looks like she wants to, do the field work through November and December before the weather may turn. So I don't know if the group would like to have a special meeting in December or a little earlier and to make the decision on this. And that way you kind of can keep this project on task, or whatever your preference is.
I would trying to think about a meeting. I know that whether we have a special one in November, I know in the past we've combined November's, December's together into one meeting. So that I think probably that's what we'll probably have to do is combine November and December together into one meeting. And we'll just have to pick a special day to go over that. But I think at that time, then we can review it, vote on it, and see how we want to proceed. That way we'll have an answer for you soon.
Well, and I'd also like to say, I mean, we're happy to be able to move ahead in January as well. I mean, we're eager to go, and we just don't want to have to wait until next August.
Right.
So that's our main concern. So yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to sign off. It was nice to be able to talk with you all tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
With that, we will go to report from Brandon Hull on his project. Mr. Hall, you're up.
See, is my camera coming on? Or okay, there it is. Well, hello, everybody. We were able to finish up the project for the expansion of the virtual tour to include East Idaho Street and looking ahead at what's to come out on Highway 16. I'm really back now. There's potentially one other project that has been brought to my attention out at Black Cat Farm. And basically otherwise, the tour is here, it's ready to view, and I'm ready to answer any questions there might be.
Are you able to show us anything?
Yeah, Cassandra, do you by chance have the tour? I'm sorry, I'm not prepared for that, but I share screen. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Sorry about that. 1 second here. Go. Okay, I'm going to attempt to do this. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I started the tour back at the intersection of Broadway and Main. There's been a lot of changes to it now. So as before, you might have seen it, you couldn't go this way. So on a beautiful morning Sunday morning with no cars, I was able to get one here right in the middle of sort of the whole intersection. And it's been kind of a way to go back and, with a lot of the historic photos that were available, find similar positions, there's a lot of places like on 2nd Street here on Idaho and 2nd that it made me realize how much Broadway and 2nd could use a 360. Like right now I've got it I took stills there to show the old pharmacy and some of the stuff around. But, so here's what it looks like today. And then with Highway 16, so in one way here, we're kind of reviewing the past. But then like Highway 16 is out on 10 Mile Creek and McDermott Road. Here is going to be, the future U-stick interchange. That's where the highway is going to go, is right across this field pretty much. This will be the Meridian side of it. There was an old historic photo that, maybe I'm being hopeful, but maybe that's 10 Mile Creek, back a long time ago. So as we've continued on, and this has to Black Cat Farm, but right now Black Cat Farm has swathing mint, chopping mint, and distilling mint. I think it would be very suitable to add historic farm site as the first location. So you could then see the barn and different things there. Of course, some of the stuff from previously are the Meridian Speedway. I know we got some new board members and stuff. Maybe everyone hasn't quite seen it yet. The Pine Street School was an early one. So the tour is starting to, take on, there's some areas here, like the park here that's going to be soon taken down, and there'll be a 5-story apartment building built there or something like that. You can kind of see over here off in the distance, the cranes and things. So we're capturing it all in a way that we're preserving it as it is today. We're digging into what it looked like in the past. but we're also kind of looking into what it's going to look like in the future. So these are some of the buildings like we had seen on the with the previous presentation, which was very informational. So here it's the same building. You're able to kind of see over the years some of the various incarnations. You can see the bank building here that has been since restored now and is the cigar store. Here's what it looks like today. So, oops, sorry, wrong one. I already clicked that one. Oops, Bank of Meridian. And then one that I was pretty happy with over here was where the old terminal was for the interurban.
Mhm.
And, you know, to kind of see it as well from some different points of view here. Sorry, my computer is going a little slow. There's kind of what it looks like now today. And then here from over by Pine Street, looking towards it, there used to be the water tower there right in town. Now you can see that that's right about where City Hall and the Creamery were. So some of these before and afters were something that kind of came about as I was looking through and figuring out what things were. I really kind of had to build a historical map in my mind and on paper of where things were to connect, you know, together these things. So
Right.
like from here, you can jump back over to Main Street in Idaho and Idaho. You got, you know, the modern Woodman building. So when you piece it together, this kind of goes hand in hand with like what you were just talking about with creating that historical survey
Yes.
as a way to determine other spots that might, you know, there might be one spot that could show 4 different house styles, you know, or things like that. So, and you know, so these have Zoom and stuff. So it's kind of, it's been a lot of fun to be honest. I went down multiple times, multiple early Sunday early mornings. There were some aerial views of Meridian, so kind of incorporating those in. So kind of like we talked about last time, you know, Blaine, it's sort of like the virtual tour and the 360s are sort of like a Christmas tree that you decorate with ornaments. And, you know, even like this photo here, you can probably see, you know, a few of those different house styles.
Yes.
But figuring out, and so I put the dot here as a way to say this is the intersection of Broadway and Meridian. I almost had to put it there for myself to remind myself, but you can see the, like right here, I don't know if you can see my mouse moving around on the screen or not, but there would be the mill. And, you know, so the train tracks would be right along over here. And so it's really fascinating when you finally, you know, because even as I've been working on it to finally start to see it this way, really starts to see what you don't have as much as what you do. And here you can see the little service station. Obviously, this picture was taken up in the water tower.
Yes.
Now that's that's Generations Plaza there. I did a 360 in there as well. I haven't included it yet because it wasn't part of the scope, but it was just one of those things as I was going around here inside the plaza. You can see the modern Woodman building. It's really fascinating. So I just thought, you know, it'd be great to come back before all of you and show you what we got. And you know, some of the buildings like the Rice Pharmacy down here. And so, you know, there's people to meet, there's old businesses to meet, there's, you know, where even in a couple of years from now, it might be a lot different. A lot of the stuff I've done in downtown Boise now that looks like this, like on Main Street, now there's a 20-story building going up right behind it.
Right.
10-story. So I would say if this becomes, you know, and it was able, like I heard in the previous presentation, it was really great for me to be able to see it as a city. I lived here. I remember having my first bank account down there at Idaho First, but it, you know, it always was so spread out in Fairview and it never really, but all of a sudden like this, you could imagine in that new building they built with the condominiums and apartments, that there'll be people walking the sidewalks and
Mhm.
potential for restaurants with, you know, it has a chance to develop into the core of a great little downtown that people may not even think of it as, that live
I
out
hear-
in the outskirts of town.
No, you've done a really good job documenting what's there now and historically what was there in the past. And this gives us another chance of preserving our history. So thank you. You've done a great job.
Okay. Well, great. I'm not sure how to unshare, stop share. Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate it. The link is there. We'll get it, all the files transferred over and any of the large format stills for the city's collection. I know there's a lot of other stuff going on and budgets are what they are, but I certainly would love to keep expanding this and telling, a deeper, fuller story as we go. So let's keep in touch.
Yeah, I think there's more possibilities out there. Depending upon what Barbara and Tag find, there's possibilities on some of those older homes to do some photographs of those also and do present day and see if we can't find some old pictures of homes and find the comparison. So thank you.
Okay, great. Well, if that's all, I will sign off.
Sounds good. Thank you, Brandon.
All right. Thanks, Blaine. Appreciate it. Sandra, board.
Okay, with that, we will go on to Eggers Farm, Black Cat Farm. This came about July, I guess, September, in July or August, by accident. My wife was looking for some stuff and found out that the old Eggers farmstead was being sold to a developer. And there are one old silo, there's an old barn, there's a double silo granary on the property that's, as far as everybody from SHPO to Ada County knows, it's the last one in existence in Ada County. Sandra, can you pull up those pictures? So I don't know if everybody's, since we haven't had a meeting in a couple of months. But I guess we need some discussion on what we think we can do, should do. At a minimum, we do nothing. We just let it go and the developer does what he does and the buildings go by the wayside. We can go out and have Brandon take pictures and get a little bit more documentation of what is there. There's been some interest. Commissioner Jagosh told me about this on Nextdoor, and I don't know if it's a neighbor of yours or who posted it. But anyway, there's some interest from the neighbors to the south, I think, that could potentially, if it's reasonable, move a structure. But there's some things that we don't have a budget to do any of this stuff. So if it is, it's going to have to be a community project, crowdfunding, someone can do a GoFundMe page. I don't know what to do. These are just photographs that I've taken. I think Cassandra's taken some of that site. So it is in Ada County right now. I went to Ada County's historic meeting in September and in October. The September meeting I went to, they didn't even know this place existed or anything was going on. So they were quite surprised by it. So we have reached out to the developer and he has given us permission to go in and photograph it to document what's there. But right now legally, Bill, I may be wrong. It's in Ada County. We have no jurisdiction at this point in time.
Mr. President, that's correct. I mean, I believe they have, I think this property was annexed with that Black Cat industrial project.
I have not seen any annexations.
Okay, so,
It has not yet been annexed.
Okay, so, and again, our code doesn't really contemplate restrictive nature of development in regards to historical structures. Now, obviously, meeting with the property owner and the developer to see what they'd be willing to do, either to keep the property on site or to move it, and what they would be willing to do, if anything, to contribute to that. And it may simply be just permission. I mean, I don't know. But definitely the dialogue should continue with the developer and the property owner to make sure that they're on board, and then to see if there are sources out there. And I don't really know whether the state or some other type of grant program, grant funding could exist to help with the cost of moving, if say, for example, to another site. I don't know if it's a movable building at all. I have no idea. But I mean, definitely on the development side, once annexation is requested, it's really hard for the city to condition things like that, since our code doesn't really contemplate it. So we couldn't prohibit them from just tearing the building down. But we definitely would like to do as much as we can. Obviously, at the minimum, the photographing the site, making sure we've got as good a documentation as we can, would be something we've done historically with this commission in the past. So.
With that, does anybody else have any ideas of what we can do? I've come up with numerous thoughts in my head. I met with Cassandra out on the site. The silos can be moved. They're labor intensive. They're just concrete blocks that stack together, and there's iron rings that hold them together. So yeah, they can be moved. Some of the blocks are damaged. They may not be able to be moved entirely and rebuilt to the same size they are now, but it is a possibility. The double granary silo or double silo granary is really a cool little building that I think could be dismantled. If you take the silos down, take the roof off, you've got 3 walls, it could be moved and reassembled. So there's possibilities there. I have emailed Ada County Development Services to see if there's someone in their Parks Department that we could talk to. Maybe Ada County has a park somewhere that they'd be interested in using these in a park within an Ada County setting. But I don't know what their budget is or anything like that. I talked with Cassandra and the parks. Who did we meet at? Who was with you?
Kim Warren, the Pathways Manager, because there is also, there's not anything right now, but the city sort of has a lot of pathways planned. And at some point, hopefully a pathway would run not on the property, but it was kind of near, and that would be a good place to potentially put some signage.
Right.
And the other person that we met with was an architectural historian who does some specialty projects and had a little bit of experience with moving buildings before. So just to kind of give some of the commissioners an idea about what moving a building like that might entail, we would likely be looking at, you'd need to have a quote, but like $200,000 that's like moving a structure like that might cost that. That's the kind of what might need to be raised either through funds or, our budget this year is $10,000, or, developer might help, or maybe there's some things out there, but it would require a lot of citizen support.
The other question that came up in that meeting was doing some sort of survey of the citizens, if I remember that right, of what the citizen felt could be done or should be done, or just their feelings on saving history. Let's just put it that way. And I don't know how to do a survey like that. So.
Yeah, that was one of the things that the architectural historian said. It's always a fair ask to sort of really ask the question, do we care? Who cares? So that's.
Or we're barking up a tree, so to speak. And I hate saying that because they're really, really neat old structures. And we're tasked with, like I said, a minimum of documenting them. I'd love to save them. I don't know if it's possible. So we have a little bit of time. I think my last conversation with planning is they didn't expect any applications until probably the first of the year. And then I don't know what the time frame is between getting application and going through planning and zoning and going through everything before he gets final approval. We don't have a lot of time, but we've got a little bit of time to play with it and look at it. But Black Cat Road was named after this place. Bree Eggers from Channel 7, it's her family's old homestead. And I think it's her grandfather had a sign on the corner of Black Cat or Franklin, what the road is, Black Cat now, of a black cat. So that's how Black Cat Road came about, was because of him. So there's a little bit of history involved that way with it. So I've spoken more today than I have in a long time. So I guess right now, until we get an application before the city, like Mr. Neri said, we have no jurisdiction on that property. He can demolish it right now. He would have to get a permit through Ada County if he demolishes it before he does his annexation. Ada County may require him to do some survey work, document that sort of stuff, but they don't have any control. He can do that stuff and then go in and just tear it down. So they don't have any regulatory control over or anything like that if he files a application for a demo permit. So I just wanted to bring the commission up to speed as to what I know, kind of what we've talked about so far in the last 2 months.
Cassandra, that quote for 200,000, is that for all of the buildings or just the silo?
And it's not a quote. We haven't received any official quote. That was just a very, but we would be looking at something in that sort of a range. And that would be just that building.
Not a cheap endeavor by any means. So, and I'm not Bill Gates, so I don't have that kind of disposable income. Any further discussion at this point? Any questions on the Eggers Farm? I'll let you guys contemplate it.
Yeah, Mr. President, again, just some thoughts out there. I mean, there certainly are developers in this community that are interested in the historical side of our community. And I don't know if Mr. Everts, former Commissioner Everts, would have, I know he's a big downtown person, so this is a little further out for him. But he may also have inroads or suggestions on people, other developers or other people out there that might be interested in helping generate some interest in this and get a number of other folks interested in our community in that. So I don't know if it's worth an effort to reach out to him, but he might at least have some ideas. Him having done 2 buildings in our town and restored them, he certainly may have some insights on avenues to take, people to talk to, opportunities that exist that we're just not aware of.
Yeah, okay. I hadn't thought about him, but I will reach out to Mr. Everts and see if he's interested in meeting me out there and we can take a look at it. So since we have permission to be on property, I think we can meet out there and look at it, and he may have an idea of what we can do. So, okay.
You do meet out there?
Yeah. Yep, I can do that. So, with that, any further discussion on the Eggers Farmstead?
Oh, I just wanted to point out that there was also a a quote on there from Whole Films that had just presented for Eggers Farm. I can't remember if it was 15 or 1,800 to document that site. So that's, again, when we do, it sounds like we're coming back to a budget discussion. That's another item to think about for the budget.
Okay.
It looks like it's 1,800.
Okay. So, and we'll circle around to that because I think what we need to do is have a combined November, December meeting. We'll get to that in just a little bit. Pass forward is next week. I thought I would be able to go online and do some conferences. I'm not going to be able to, so I don't know if anybody else is going to be able to. I know that the cost to watch a webinar is going to go up tomorrow. And I don't know exactly what the costs are right now, but and I don't know what everybody's schedule is. Mr. Keller's probably going to be busy in school the whole time, so he can't do anything. I know that sucks, doesn't it? So I think at this point in time, we may not be able to do anything with Pass Forward this year, so.
Mr. President, I just wanted to add that if someone was interested in attending the conference, there are, that is part of the Historic Preservation Commission's budget. There are some professional development funds.
So, you can go to, I'll email out the link to everybody. If you're interested, look at it and then let Cassandra know if you think you can watch 1, 2, 3, whatever you can do. So with that, we've completed that, wrong agenda. Our next regular scheduled meeting would be on Thanksgiving Day. So, and our December meeting is awful close to Christmas. So, a couple of times, Cassandra, in the past, we've done a poll online. You've sent out some dates that are available. I don't know if you can still do that or not, of dates in early December, mid-December, that we could possibly meet.
So you want to look at dates for early to mid-December for?
I
next
think
week?
we need to meet one more time before the end of the year to go over the budgets for TAG, Hull Films, see what's available that we can propose spending that money on. So we can get both of those going if we want them to do that second survey, to have Brandon go out to the Eggers Farm and photograph that. So I think we do need to meet in December to go over that stuff.
Could I request just a brief statement from each of the commissioners that are currently present about just some general schedules so that I could try to find the best time?
Mr. President, I would also add that SWAC set a special meeting for the 7th of December. So that this room will be used then. The P&Z meets on the 1st and 3rd Thursdays. So that's the 1st and the 15th. Arts Commission, I think, meets on the 8th.
Second Thursday.
Second Thursday, yeah. So that would be the 8th. So that just gives us, and then the Parks Commission normally meets on the second Wednesday, which is the 14th. So just to give you some idea that obviously council meets on Tuesdays. So the transportation, I believe, is the first Monday of the month. So that would be the 5th. So just giving you some kind of parameters about things that are already scheduled around that. So, and again, it doesn't have to be since this is a special meeting, it can be at a different time. It can be earlier, it can be It could be at noon. I mean, it doesn't have, I know Mr. Keller may not be able to be here if it's at noon, but you certainly have other options besides just the 4:30 on a Thursday.
Right. And I think my calendar is free from what I can see right now. So if you want to just email Cassandra, or do you want dates now if possible, or?
Or just general, I'm going to assume you, Commissioner Keller is probably like after 3 it's gonna have to be after 3, right? And Commissioner Jagosh, you're an educator, so probably also after 3. Okay. That's helpful. And then are there-
Cassandra,
Yes.
I'm also in education.
Yes, that's right. Okay. So definitely after 3. And then are there any days of the week for any of you in particular that do not work? Okay, I'll try and I'll send out a poll with some dates for early to mid-December after 3 p.m.
Okay. With that, then we will fill out the poll, let Sandra know what dates we can meet in December for our last meeting of the year. Anything else anybody needs to talk about? Any questions? With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Alt, second by Commissioner Jagosh for adjournment. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. And we'll see you in December sometime.